scapula, I realized we didn't do the superior angle of scapula. So when you go back to your table, the last bone you'll find is superior angle of scapula. So you know the acromion here is kind of the distal end of the spine of the scapula over here, but the superior angle is kind of over here, a little bit more towards the medial side, right there. So just palpate in kind of a downward direction, and when you feel this point, this bony point right here, just lateral to the neck, that's your, go ahead and mark that. That's your superior angle right there. Okay, so that's just going in a downward direction. So levator scapula will draw from these upper cervicals to there, right? So here we go. Levator scapula, this top portion goes to this piece here, and this bottom portion goes to that piece there. So there's a little bit of a twist to this muscle here. So it's going to have this kind of like interesting little curve to it, right? So that's levator scapula right there. Let me see if I can do like a yellow or an orange or something. Here's a yellow, maybe that one. Just a different color, so things don't start running into each other here. Alright, so that's the scalene, that's the levator scapula coming from the upper cervical, cervical 1 through 4, and going down that way. Now the scalenes, now they come from the lower cervicals, like, you know, I'm not exactly sure on exactly which ones, but the higher one goes up to the front here, and then the lower one goes to the back. So before I do that, I'm going to do the boundary here. I'm going to do the SCM. So SCM goes from the mastoid process here to the sternum and clavicle over here, right? So that's why it's called the SCM, sternum, clavicle, mastoid process, right? So that's our landmarks here. So we're going to go from the mastoid process here and down to here, and so you can even see the SCM on most people. It's right here, So that's the SCM right there. So that's the muscle we're going to trace, and I want you to find the front of it because it is kind of a wide muscle. So gentle palpation here. You can kind of choke your client if you're not careful. So try not to choke people. Right, it's very gentle, sort of. Here's the edge of this muscle, sort of palpation. Alright, so there's the front edge, and then the back edge is over here. That's that whole muscle right there. So there's the back edge of the SCM. Okay. So you have SCM up front. You can draw on a couple of those fiber direction lines there. SCM up front. Levator scapula in the back, over here. And then in between we have the scalenes. So scalenes are more underneath. So you have anterior scalene coming from like a little bit lower down here and going this way. And so the easiest way to palpate the anterior scalene is that actually if you come over here, feel the SCM a little bit right there, it's kind of loose, and then right here, right behind it, it's kind of tight, right? And this is traveling in the same direction as the SCM. So I'm just going to follow this little muscle right behind the SCM and see where it goes, and it takes me right about there. So literally it just kind of traces the SCM. Maybe that's not going to show up, is it? Well, I guess I'll try this green. I think the green's going to look the same as the blue though. It usually does. Alright, so there's the top of the anterior scalene, and it's traveling kind of down this way, just behind the SCM right here. So there's anterior scalene right there. Okay, there's the anterior. Middle scalene comes from a little bit more lateral. So if you feel over here, you'll feel a little space, and then there'll be another one right here. So right here, we're going to draw and follow that up this way. Right, so there's the middle. So there's anterior, and there's the middle. And then posterior, you're going to have another little gap here, and it almost goes all the way out to the edge. So it's kind of right here, right almost where the edge of the trapezius is right there. So there's the posterior scalene right there. So something like that is what you're going for. Anterior, kind of here just behind the SCM, middle scalene, and then posterior. And so The reason we avoid this area because the brachial plexus travels between the anterior and middle scalene. So right in this area, if you palpate and you palpate up and down, you may be able to feel some fibers just going kind of a horizontal direction. And this is the main area you want to avoid, is between this anterior and middle scalenes, because right in there, you'll feel that horizontal fiber. So that's the brachial plexus, the subclavian artery, subclavian vein, your your lymph ducts, and all that stuff, right? So that's the main area. So, but you're just going to mostly go by palpation. So when you're on a muscle, very distinctly, it's like a cable going in this north-south direction, right? So if you're on something that's kind of north-south, then you know you're on something that you should be on, that you're looking for. If you're on another thing that's going more east-west, then that's something you should avoid in this area. Okay? So that's why we're doing this in particular, is just so you can get an idea of what are the fiber directions that you're looking for, that those are the good ones you're looking for, and then what are the other fiber directions that you're going to try to stay away from. All right? So as you're doing this portion of it, please try to engage and try to find that horizontal sort of fiber direction. It's going to be somewhat subtle on some of your clients, like on Antoinette. I can barely feel it right here, but I can feel it. So just look for that and see if you can find that, right? So just kind of reinforce your little lines right there and right there.
Question again, where is the main point of to stay away from? I missed that.
Between the anterior and middle, so in this little gap right here.
That
But it's
gap
mostly
right
that line going that way that you want to avoid. So it's this line, right? Because it's going from the cervical between these two scalene muscles, under the clavicle, under pec minor, and then to the arm, right? So that's this line that it's going on about, something like that,
Okay.
right?
So when I doing that, I normally put my hand like that and press down, like
Yeah.
palming. That's okay.
Normally, when you're doing like big, like knuckles or palms, it's not a big issue. But when you start getting fingertips, that's when you want to especially know where you're at. And so that's why we're doing it today, is we're getting in with fingertips. And so that's why I want you guys to familiarize yourselves
So no
with that, with
fingertips
the area.
right there. All right.
Well, fingertips are fine. It's just like, yeah,
Know where to put it.
just know where not to go.
All right.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
you know what my saying with stuff like that?
What's that?
Don't go.
Right.
You
Well,
gotta
sometimes
watch
it'll
your
be
steps.
helpful. I don't do a lot of finger stuff in here anymore. I do more of that big stuff that I show you guys early on. But like it's helpful to know the anatomy in here anyway, just to touch it, But you're not always going to need to do this really detailed work. But you never know when you'll need to, right? Sometimes that's what people need. They need that really fine-tuned, detailed type of work.
All right.
So let's go ahead and do our last bit of drawing. So we started with the levator scapula back here. We got that superior angle of the scapula, that last bony landmark we added in. Then that's coming from the upper cervicals. The SCM is coming from the mastoid process to the sternoclavicular joint over here, and then anterior scalene right just behind SCM, middle scalene over here, and then posterior scalene over here. All right, let's do it.